Today on Inside Utah Politics, Republicans prepare to run the show in Washington. How our state party is processing and running with that landslide election night win. Plus, Trump talks cabinet picks, how these early announcements are shaping expectations for his second administration. And two historic wins for Utah Democrats. We sit down with some of the first Samoan American representatives in the history of American state legislatures.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Jordan Tracy. Let's go inside Utah politics. We are taking some time today to better understand the GOP's landslide victory on election night and what they've been doing to capitalize on it. In Washington, Republicans are fresh off the back of leadership elections. In the House, it looks like Mike Johnson is on track to keep the Speaker's gavel. And in the Senate, South Dakota's John Thune will take up the mantle from leader Mitch McConnell. Now, those elections were not without controversy, however, and there looks to be a brewing battle over confirming some of the president's nominees. Joining us today to help make sense of it all is Utah GOP Chairman Rob Axson. Rob, welcome back to Inside Utah Politics.
Hey, good to be with you, Jordan.
So let's just kick things off with talking about Election Day. You know, it seemed like, a lot went well for the GOP in Election Day. We have a presidential candidate, the first to win the popular vote in 20 years, a majority in the House and Senate that will deepen conservative control of the courts. So how do you interpret the message looking at the results that was sent from the ballot box on the 5th?
So very clearly, the country has spoken. Our state has spoken. The country has spoken. They wanted a change of direction. They wanted to entrust President Trump and a Republican-controlled Congress with the ability to now enact some of the policies and promises and commitments that have been made on the campaign trail over these last 2 years. So that was very clear. However, for any American who's overly optimistic or overly sad by this, we need a reminder. It's about what happens moving forward. So if you feel too discouraged about what's going on and the election results, lean in, get involved, figure out what policies you want to care about. Certainly, I'm on this side of things, very proud of what we were able to accomplish. But I've been in those. You still have
confetti maybe on your
maybe a little bit, but I remember those election nights when it doesn't go the way that you want it to go, and things still proceed. Our country still is successful, but I am very optimistic of what President Trump and this Congress is going to deliver.
And how much of it do you think was this incumbency for Vice President Harris? Now everyone's starting to do the autopsy, looking back, Visions 2020. They're saying, oh, well, incumbents all over the globe, didn't do well in their elections. How much of it was that message for change that went well for the former president and now President-elect Trump?
I think when you hear from folks that on one day are saying everything is in their favor and then the next day are telling a completely different story, it's maybe an indication that you don't need to listen to those pundits. The reality is Kamala Harris did not make a sufficient argument to the people of the United States as to why she should be entrusted with continuing what this Biden administration had been engaged in. And elections are that snapshot. It's that snapshot. Have you earned the trust? Have you ensured that you've given confidence to the people who are voting for you that they can feel comfortable with what you're going to do on their behalf? She missed the mark, and President Trump was able to deliver this go around and make it clear that Americans feel like he's going to deliver on what he's promised.
And on the flip side of things, there were Republicans who underperformed the president-elect in states Nevada, Arizona. Now, you guys had folks working in those states, knocking doors, things like that. Do you have any insight that kind of explains maybe the divide in those states where Trump did very well, but some of the other Republicans underperformed?
So keep in mind, in elections, a lot of it goes into name ID. So how effective have you been in retail politics as a candidate of getting your name out there? Are you an incumbent? How much money do you have backing your campaign? That's definitely an animal that plays out in every campaign. In the presidential race, everybody knew who Donald Trump was and everybody knew who Kamala Harris was. So it plays out a little bit differently.
Now, Utah was kind of the odd duck in some ways here. You saw, a lot of the place shifting right, a lot of states shifting right. Now, it didn't shift as right as people first thought. I mean, as left as people thought in Utah originally, because you're seeing the more votes that came in, the president-elect pulled in a lot more of that. But in Utah County, Davis County, you're seeing a little bit of a shift left. Is this an indication of change in the state? Is there any sign of trouble for the GOP in some of these counties?
No, there's not any sign of trouble, but there is always this reminder, you have to be listening. You can't take wins or losses and then not learn the lesson. You have to be listening to the voters and making sure that you understand what it is that concerns them, what it is that they want, and then make sure that you're learning from that to deliver a better message, to have candidates who can articulate that vision more appropriately. It was interesting, right after Election Day here in Utah, because our ballots are still coming in and it takes a longer time to count than in some states. I saw those reports and people were saying, oh, look, Utah has moved a little bit to the left. I knew that that wasn't going to be accurate because at that point, 40% of our ballots had not even been counted. And if you look, Republican margins outperform on Election Day and last-minute votes. So those votes, none of them had been counted. So not only was it not accurate that we had moved to the left, we actually moved to the right as a state, maybe not quite as much as some other states, but that's more a function of how conservative and how Republican we already were. So to give you an idea, prior to this election results, Utah, by many metrics, was the 11th most Republican state in the entire country. We moved a little bit more to the right, but others leapfrogged us.
Sure.
We're now 15th. So we're still the 15th most Republican state in the country. I take that as a call to action that we have work to be done, but it certainly is not an indication that in any way, shape, or form we're moving away from the traditional Republican values we have here in Utah.
Now let's talk about some of the roles that maybe our senators and Congress people will take place here in this new administration. You know, a lot of nominations are coming out. Some controversial. Matt Gaetz was one that just came out recently for Attorney General. You're seeing some split inside the party on that one. RFK Jr. was just announced as well for HHS. So what role do you think people like Senator-elect Curtis or Senator Mike Lee will play a role in these confirmation hearings, and maybe do you have an insight on how they're feeling on some of these?
Yeah, I mean, certainly in the case of Senator Lee, you have somebody who is now in the midst of his third term. He is a very capable, consistent member of the Senate. He certainly is very heavily involved in that confirmation process. Especially as a member of the Judiciary Committee, you not only are confirming these larger nominations for cabinet positions, but you're always going through the judicial nomination and confirmation process. So Senator Lee, in addition to all of that, is a close ally of President Trump. Because of that, he's going to play a very key role. You know, Senator-elect John Curtis, he's going to have the opportunity to very quickly get his feet wet. He will go from having never participated in any confirmation hearing to having many right before him very quickly, and I think he will be a very quick study. I mean, he's a very capable and competent member of our House of Representatives, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he'll do joining Senator Lee there in the Senate.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a question. I don't think there's a question how Senator Lee is going to vote on a lot of these confirmations. He's a strong Trump ally. But for Senator-elect Curtis, he said to me the day after Election Day about the difference between lawmakers who work to get things done and show horses. I think show horse is probably talking about Matt Gaetz. So do you think there's a chance that he and Senator Lee might split on the way they feel about these things?
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the benefits that we get in our system of government, that each state has two individuals that represent us. And sometimes we will see Senator Lee vote with the Republican caucus or with the president consistently, and there might be one that he's kind of the outlier. Other times it will be Senator Curtis that is the outlier. By and large, I think you're going to see them vote consistently together. I'm excited to see Senator Lee as the Energy and Natural Resources Committee chairman moving into this next Congress. That's going to be powerful. And in Senator Curtis, you're going to have somebody who has consistently called out the concerns that he has with reckless spending. I think that is going to be paramount to the benefit of Utah as he continues to fight on that issue.
And as we're wrapping up here, I want to really quickly just talk Beehive State. Governor Cox race was an interesting one. You had a in-party challenger running a write-in campaign. It seemed like, looking at the results, Governor Cox performed really well still with that in-party challenger. What does that tell us about the composition of the Republican majority here? And is there any work that has to be done to kind of meld the divide here after an in-party challenger?
I think the divide, where it exists in the Republican Party or in the state legislature, there's always an opportunity to meld that. And the way that you do that is by identifying lessons learned and opportunities that can be seized. And the nice thing that comes from this governor's race is we have seen some issues, specifically in state election law, that are currently not as transparent as they probably should be, or as clear or as consistent as they should be. These are now opportunities for the state legislature to address and to fix that. I'm grateful for that we have this opportunity in our system of government in the United States and here in Utah, where you learn what works well. You also identify, you know what, we can do a little bit better. And we should never be embarrassed or ashamed when we identify those places where we can improve. That's a big part of the process.
All right, Rob, thank you so much for being back inside Utah politics. I'm sure we'll be talking much more coming up.
Hey, thanks, Jordan. Always good to be with you.
Thanks, Rob. All right, still ahead on Inside Utah Politics, change is brewing in Washington. How new progressives in Congress are navigating the rightward shift. Welcome back. President-elect Donald Trump is stacking his cabinet for a second term in office, announcing picks for top jobs in his new administration. Washington correspondent Rashad Hudson has more.
President-elect Donald Trump is wasting no time putting the beginning pieces of his administration together.
You can see his resolve already and how quickly he's making really good, smart picks.
Trump is expected to nominate Florida Senator Marco Rubio as Secretary of State and South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem for Homeland Security Secretary. He's announced former New York Congressman Lee Zeldin for EPA Administrator, Florida Congressman Mike Waltz for National Security Advisor, and former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee for Ambassador to Israel.
One of the first big decisions that a president makes in the term is who will be the people that staff these offices.
Many of President-elect Trump's picks for his new cabinet are coming from Capitol Hill.
Hopefully no more for a little while.
There's a risk with stacking the cabinet with members of the House of Representatives, where Republicans are projected to have a slim majority. For House Speaker Mike Johnson, that could be a problem.
President Trump fully understands and appreciates the math here, and it's just a numbers game.
Any House member Trump picks will need to be replaced with a special election. And for Trump to help protect the majority,
only pick people from safe Republican districts. That's the first thing, right?
Jewett believes getting Trump's nominees confirmed will be a smooth process. Reporting in Washington, Rashad Hudson.
While much of the story of the 2024 election has been the country's rightwards shift, there are some new members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus who got the chance to visit the Capitol for the first time since the election this past week. Our Washington correspondent Maddie Beertemple looks at how they're navigating their arrival to a shifting D.C.
While Democrats figure out what went wrong after losing the White House and Senate,
we should be doing that soul searching.
The House Progressive Caucus is celebrating what they say went right.
And you find that soul in these new members of Congress.
Texas Representative Greg Casar and Washington Representative Pramila Jayapal introduced 7 new members of their caucus, many making history with their elections.
We have our first trans member of Congress, first Iranian American Democrat in Congress.
The incoming lawmakers spanning California, New Jersey, Delaware, and Arizona say voters sent them to Congress to address a number of issues. California's Laura Friedman is taking the seat of now Senator-elect Adam Schiff.
People care deeply about climate change because my state is literally on fire right now.
Delaware's Sarah McBride is the first transgender member of Congress.
What I was hearing was that we need to guarantee affordable health care, housing, and child care.
California's Luz Rivas is the first Latina to represent her district.
I represent an immigrant community, one that would be devastated by the mass deportations.
While the caucus celebrates its new members, it's also trying to address the losses of last week.
I'm not really interested in blame.
Representative Jayapal says the party has to communicate their successes better.
People can't be in denial or question whether or not we are standing up for them.
Those new members take their oaths on January 3rd. In Washington, I'm Maddie Beertemple.
Coming up, some historic elections here in Utah. How 2 representative-elects are breaking new ground for Samoan Americans in Utah.
You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Welcome back. Salt Lake County voters made history on Election Day. Utahns are now on track to vote the first Samoan woman and second Samoan man to ever serve in the state legislature in the continental U.S. If these results hold, West Valley City Councilman Jake Fitsumana and businesswoman Verona Maunga will join Democrats in the Utah House this January. They'll represent House Districts 30 and 31 respectively, which encompass parts of West Valley City and Taylorsville. And they join me here today on Inside Utah Politics. Mr. Fitsumano, thank you so much for joining us. Ms. Maunga, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. So I want to start with you, Mr. Fitsumano. When you decided to run, what made you jump into the race?
You know, being elected twice to the city council has really taught me that getting involved in local government is a great way to elevate the concerns of people right in my own neighborhood, including my own family. And seeing the importance of doing this maybe at a state level was really compelling. And so that's really why I'm doing it, is for the neighborhood.
Ms. Maunga, you come from being a small business owner, also a community advocate as well. What made you want to make the jump into running for the House?
You know, I think as a community organizer, as a business owner, as a mom, we have the opportunity to see what's really going on in our communities and in our district. And just seeing some of the things that are really important to our families and looking and following the legislature, I just felt like we have to do something. It's up to all of us to get involved civically and do our part. And I'm just here wanting to do my part.
And obviously, when history's made and representation is brought into a new stage here in the House, all the questions are like, you know, what issues aren't being covered? But I feel like a lot of the answers is everybody has kind of similar issues regardless of who you are. But tell me about the representation now, the fact that you can represent your communities in the House to bring those issues that are facing your community to the forefront. What does that mean to you, and what are some of the issues that you'd like to focus on?
It means a lot. Samoans have been here in the state of Utah since 1896. We're not necessarily a new community, but I think the fact that our community is getting more civically engaged is really just reflecting this, the fact that we're present and contributing in every sector of Utah society. And I'm very proud. I've never shied away from my identity or from the community that raised me, but I'm very proud to be a representative for all the people in my district.
Ms. Maunga, how does that change, you know, bringing that representation to your community?
You know, I think it's an opportunity for every person in our communities throughout this state to have a voice, to have representation. So whatever your background is, whatever your faith is, whatever your occupation is, wherever your experiences and your perspectives fall, it's so important that we're represented on all sides of the aisle. And for me, really, it's just bringing a voice to the people who don't have the opportunity to go up to the Hill. There's one thing, like, we can all vote, right? But not everyone has the opportunity to go up to the Hill during the legislative session and advocate for themselves or for their families. I just want to be able to connect some of those gaps.
Absolutely. And Mr. Fitsumano, now our audience might recognize you not only as a councilman, but also the fatal shooting outside of Hunter High School 2 years ago, where you kind of became a face of the two families and a spokesperson. What, as your experience with that situation, but also in West Valley City as a councilman, how has that kind of shaped the way or some of the issues that are made important in your mind?
What it does is it has cemented for me and should for everyone else that our local issues, the things that happen in our communities, on our street corners with our own children, our nephews, our friends, really are impacted by policies and by procedures and regulations. And whether that is, unfortunately, a tragic incident, or whether that's how much we pay to register our car, or how often we're going to run over this pothole on this particular road. Those things that happen in our neighborhoods to each individual, those are all involved with decisions and policies made by somebody somewhere else. And so why shouldn't we be the ones involved and the ones who are helping to make those decisions that impact all of these things in our daily lives.
Now, part of your platform was safe gun reform as well. What are some of the things that you think you can address in the state legislature? Obviously, it's a majority Republican. Second Amendment rights is top of the list. What are some of the things you think that you maybe can find some common ground on gun reform?
You know, I'm a gun owner. I think that there are some things that we can do as a state legislature and as a community together just to ensure that our kids are safe. You talked about the shooting at Hunter High School right outside of it. Things like that are happening in our cities, in West Valley, in Taylorsville, and even throughout the state. And so if we can just implement some safety laws and amendments, I think it'll be better for our children. And that's the ultimate goal, to make sure that our families are safe and our kids are safe.
And one of the things you brought up in your campaign, you wrote an op-ed in the Salt Lake Tribune. You talked about, listening to all voices, whether they disagree with you or not, coming together. That's something that has to happen in our state legislature. So how do you maybe, bridge those divides, come together and make comprehensive change in order to make sure all voices are heard and represented in the state?
To me, the way we bridge the divide is to recognize and acknowledge the shared values that all of us have. Regardless of our political party, regardless of our ethnicity, regardless of all these identifiers that we have, we all care about families. We all want safe places to live. We all want accessible, affordable housing and health care. How we get to those things, we may have differences in how that's implemented or how we think through those issues. But I think for me, you cannot do that by playing a team game. You cannot just, this is not gang warfare. This is not sports teams competing against each other. We all live in the same communities. We're all paying the same taxes. We're all living in the same areas. We cannot just immediately dismiss a whole segment of the population just because they don't belong to the same political party or don't have the same, core beliefs maybe that we have. We have to be talking to each other. We have to be neighbors, and we can do that in our neighborhoods as well as in the State House.
Ms. Malmgren, a small business owner, we saw on national stage that there was kind of a national rout with Democrats, with the main issue being the economy. But you see those kitchen table issues as a small business owner. What did you hear from the community when you ran here locally, and what are some of the things you think need to change in order to make sure those issues are heard?
I think we need to talk to each other more. Just like Jake said, as I've been knocking on doors for the last year, getting to know my neighbors and my community better, people are talking about the economy. Like, that is the #1 issue for so many of our families. Inflation is out of control. Small business owners are struggling to keep their businesses open. And I think we have to have a conversation about how we make this work for all Utahns. The other thing that's a big issue that I'm hearing at the doors is housing and renters' rights. And so people are struggling to make ends meet and to put food on the table. That's a big priority for me.
I want to end on this because I think this is extremely important. When firsts are made in anything, representation trickles down to the young people in the community. What are your message now that since you're bringing that representation to your community to encourage them to also engage and be the next legislatures in the future?
It's often said that being the first means being lonely, but in our Samoan culture we have a saying that says which means the leader is no greater, or the leader is not ahead of the people that they lead. We're all in this together. We may be the first in some of these different roles, but we are still standing on the shoulders of those who have gone before us in many other avenues, and those who have made it possible for us to run for office here in this country. And so I think just by being able to show people from my neighborhood who went to public schools like I did, who grew up in families just like ours, if we can do it, they can too.
Your message to folks who see you today taking on this role?
My parents immigrated to America in the 70s from Samoa to Hawaii, and then we eventually made our way here to Utah. Utah is home, and I've always had such a great love for the community and the people who've raised me here in this state. But I never saw anyone in these spaces who looked like me growing up. And so was running for office or even owning a business at the very top of my mind as a child? Not necessarily. But for my young nieces, faces and young girls and boys, like I hope that they can see themselves in me through the work that I do. And my goal and commitment is to work effectively and honestly and represent all communities well. And I'd love to see more young girls and people who share some of my experiences and background eventually run for office.
Well, congratulations to the both of you, and thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to having you back on Inside Utah Politics.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys. Well, stay with us. More Inside Utah Politics is coming up after the break. Well, that does it for today's Inside Utah Politics. Don't forget, if you have any local political stories that you'd like to see, make sure to reach out. You can email InsideUtahPolitics@abc4.com. You can also follow along with me on social media, on X at Jordan Tracy TV, or on Instagram. You can search for Jordan Tracy. And you can find ABC4 on social media to follow along no matter where you are. And while you're at it, download the ABC4 News app. We're always on. Thanks for being with us, everyone. We'll see you next week when we go Inside Utah Politics.